Hello and welcome to the Fighter Love channel, where we talk all things nutrition, health, and sustainability. I'm Camilla, naturopath and co-founder of Fighter Love, a company dedicated to bringing only the most innovative and sustainable plant-based solutions to the Australian and New Zealand markets. So today I have the immense pleasure of being joined by Simon Meakin. Simon Meakin is the UK Operations and Agronomy Director at Nature's Crops International. Simon is responsible for the continued agronomic improvement of ahi flower and other species within the supply chain, maintaining oil quality and ensuring robust, traceable supply chains are in place for the crop. He's a trained commercial and development agronomist with over 25 years' experience in the specific arena of new crop development and commercialization. And he's also the author of the UK reference book, Crops for Industry. Simon holds a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture with an honours in agronomy and a postgraduate Masters of Science in Agronomy and Pest Management. And he's further BASIS and FACTS accredited. Simon is by far the best person to speak to about what makes ahi flower the sustainable and regeneratively grown omega option that it is. Simon, thank you so much for joining me today.
Pleasure, Camilla. Nice to be here. And yeah, it was always good to talk about ahi flower.
Great. So Simon, I would love to know what inspired you to become involved in regenerative agriculture?
Well, I guess it's sort of, I suppose it starts far too many years ago. I've always been someone who's sort of like been outside. When I was a child, I was always outside, and we lived in the middle of nowhere. We had plenty of animals around, and I was like just being outside, being in the country, and so hence my interest in farming and agronomy and agriculture. And I guess I started off doing conventional crop production, and then over time, both in the UK and overseas, you've seen soils, you've seen monoculture. I've been areas where it's not soil, it's mud, it's dirt, and and then involved in putting more organic matter into soils and seeing big improvements and seeing more biodiversity. And I guess sort of regenerative agriculture, because it's got a very conservation approach to food and farming systems, and it's looking long term at maintaining yields and food for the world, really. It's been quite inspiring, and there's been talk and various studies saying that there could be 30, 50, 60, 100 harvests left. And I know that's not necessarily overly, some of that's been poo-pooed, but it just gets your brain thinking, we've got to do something to make sure we're here for the long term. And, soil is where everything starts with, really. So, that's really where my interest starts. And it's great to be in an inspiring area of agriculture. And I've got two young lads who are under 10, and, you want them to be here for a thriving green planet, long after I'm adding to the carbon chain.
Of course, those are pretty terrifying stats that people are throwing out there.
Well, I think that's it, and I mean, I think that at the end of the day, regenerative agriculture, the beauty of it is that you're basically improving things, regenerating the soil. There's a lot of talk about sustainable agriculture, which is great. At least things are not getting worse, but we're trying to get away from the extraction side, where you're just taking all the time from the ground, and something has to give, really. So that's I think that's where figures are, and we've seen. I mean, crikey, just this week, in the UK, there's been heavy rain, there's flooding, down in the south of the UK, and there's obviously soil runoff. We're losing something like 2 million tons of topsoil a year, I think, just in the UK, going into rivers. So anything that you can do to prevent, basically harm of the soil, prevent runoff, surely got to be a good thing. I think that's where regenerative agriculture, and again, it's not a one size fits all. It's good farming practice, but it's certainly got a big part to play.
Very, very inspiring and alarming in equal measure.
I think that's right, isn't it? But I think everybody has to play their part, really, don't they, in
We
the
do.
ecosystem? And
Absolutely.
farmers, no one's wanting to damage soil. Sometimes it's practices that have been going on for a while, and it's a change of mindset. And then obviously initial concerns. Will it work on on their farm? Which is why
Mm.
the beauty of regenerative agriculture against some others is that you can pick bits and pieces that work on your particular farming system, and it
Mm.
works for you. And each little step you take has got to make a bigger improvement longer term.
Yeah. So Simon, how did you come to be working with Ahi flower?
Oh, thanks, Camilla. I've been involved in specialty crop production and development for over 25 years, actually, which is quite alarming. But it's a really exciting part of agriculture and agronomy, because you've just got such an area to expand. You've got almost like a clean slate, and it's exciting to see what the potential is for certain crops. So I've developed various species that have come to commercialization, and Nature's Crops. When I joined the team there, it's a very inspiring team, and I found all about Ahi flower. It seems such a great opportunity, such a great crop, and market potential was absolutely vast. Anything that you can do that could replace fish oil has got to be brilliant. And so I joined the team really when it was sort of fairly embryonic, and we had a few handfuls of Ahi flower seeds, saying, "Well, this is a great crop. The oil's fantastic, but really we need to make it commercial." So I've been literally at the very start, from the breeding, crop development, through trials, and pleased to say, over the last decade or so, we've taken a crop from a handful of seed to a commercial opportunity for UK growers, and I guess thankfully a fantastic oil that's available to consumers across the globe.
Yeah. Am I right in thinking it's been a 13-year crop selection process with Ahi flower?
Well, probably a bit longer than that, actually.
Really?
The
Okay.
initial idea, Camilla, was probably about 20 years ago, when
Incredible.
Andrew Hebard, who our CEO, he was speaking to a quite an eminent oil scientist, who said, "Well, really, you should be looking for a fish oil alternative." So, hence, we scoured the annals, botanical gardens, looking for a species that seemed to fit the bill. And from a couple of hundred different species, we narrowed it down to Ahi flower. And ever since then, we've been developing the crops. So every year, we're making more and more progress in terms of yield, in terms of agronomic tweaks, and to come to your point on the breeding side, yes, we're doing a lot of natural selection. So looking at different lines, we're doing some small scale crossing, and all the time we're getting better yields, which is great for our farmers. And looking at better oil content all the time, more robust plant. And this is the exciting element with Ahi flower. Some of the species, or some of the lines we looked at, sorry, they got disease, they collapsed, they didn't grow. So it's great to see the Goliaths within the pack that have got a real angle that we can push and develop further.
And talking about yield here, I remember there was a time where I was putting together marketing material for our Ahi flower proposition in Australia. And every time I got something designed or printed, I had to update the number of anchovies that were the equivalent amount. I mean, it's amazing. It's gone, I think, since I've been working with you, alongside you guys, I think it's gone from maybe, was it 350,000 anchovies saved really per acre of Ahi flower grown, in terms of omega oil equivalency, to 500,000. It's really
Correct, and that's the exciting thing that we're still just in the foothills, I guess, of the crop's potential.
Yeah.
It's which makes it so exciting, really, and it's great to be part of it. So yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. Back in the early days, we'd probably plant 25 kilos of seed in the ground, and we'd harvest 20 kilos and scratch our head and say, well, there's not a good business model here. So that's been a bit of a challenge, but that's where we've got the expertise in house with our agronomy team. We've got our breeding partners, NIAB in the UK, at Cambridge, an eminent research facility. They're working with us all the time. We're getting germplasm from various repositories, seeing how they perform. So we've gone from literally 25 kilos, right up to multiple tons of seed a hectare, which is great. And as you said, that all comes back to the more yield we get, the better the saving is when it comes to the equivalent amount of fish that you get. I think we've got to this level where a hectare now of Archiflower seed is the equivalent of almost 1 million anchovies. So every year, coming back to how it makes you feel, and it's an inspiring job in regenerative agriculture, that and the crop itself. Every harvest, you think, crikey, we've done a lot for the a lot for the environment and a lot for the marine ecosystem.
Absolutely. It's interesting with Archiflower, whichever angle of the business you're coming from, it just feels so inspiring to be working with this crop. It really is something very special.
Yeah, fantastic, really is. Yeah, every day you feel like there's a new opportunity and a new
Yeah.
challenge, and every day is different. And our farmer cohort, they're inspiring as well, and they come up with different ideas and say, Simon, why are we not doing this? How about trying this? And that's where you get these your big step changes in crop performance.
Yeah. No, I mean, whether we're coming from the health perspective or from the regenerative agriculture perspective, there's just so much development on both sides, which is extraordinary.
Yeah, yeah.
So, Simon, going back to basics, where does Archiflower oil come from and what makes it regeneratively grown and traceable?
So Archiflower is our patented trade name for the plant Buglossoides arvensis, which is also known as corn Cromwell, colloquially in the UK known as stone seeds. So it's basically the oil comes from pressing the seeds, so that the seeds are about 1,000 seeds, weigh about 5 grams, just to give you a bit of an idea of the size of them. So little small seeds, and the plant grows to about a meter tall. Seeds are held in little clusters of 4 along the branches, and then we harvest those, press them gently, and that's where the oil comes from. The beauty of Archiflower is that it's totally non-GM. So we've also been involved at the very start with all the plant breeding, and in terms of the traceability and the sustainability of it, the great thing is we have all of the crop grown in the UK. We have a fantastic network of farmers who grow the crop for us. So we provide them with all the agronomic guidance they need to get a fantastic crop. And the beauty of it is we have the whole supply chain tied up. So literally from the start, we provide seed to the growers. We know where the seed comes from. We know what variety it is. We have protected varieties. We then look at the crop throughout the production seasons. So myself and our team, we're actually boots on the ground, looking at crops in the field, so we can see how it's developing. We can, just make sure everything's looking fine all the way through the season. We can take photographs. So basically, at the end of it, we have our growers harvest the seed. And so then we get that tested all the way through. So we get samples tested at independent laboratories just for species, for the purity, for the oil content, make sure the fatty acid profile is where it should be, and then it goes into store. And again, all of our growers in the UK are part of approved assurance schemes. And then we go all the way through to moving seed into our own facility where it's basically batch pressed, tested for quality, so we can then go all the way back down the supply chain to know which farmers' fields it's coming from. All of our growers fill in with what we have our own proprietary crop assurance 365 scheme, which basically says this is what's gone on the crop. This is how it's been grown through the season. This is when it was planted. So overall, there's nothing there that we don't have a handle on at all. So I don't think there's any other oil crop that would have that same level of traceability from start to finish. There's other species where they can be commingled because we're the only people doing it. We know exactly what's happened from step 1 to step 10.
Yeah. Without naming any names, I would imagine there aren't many omega oils which are providing that level of traceability and assurance of purity either.
I don't think so. I mean, just because other oilseeds, that they're more commodified, so there's production all around the globe. So batches will get mixed together, and with Ahiflower, as I say, because we're the entire supply chain managers. We've got every single seed. We can literally go back to growers and say, right, here's pictures of this particular crop in the field. Here's it growing. Here it is in flower. Here's a picture of a ladybird on it. All the sort of things that are great to see. And then in terms of the regenerative aspects, so it's great that it's fully traceable. In terms of the regenerative benefits, Ahiflower is a crop that doesn't need a huge amount of inputs. So we don't irrigate it. The great thing is it's that the leaves are quite hairy, so it's sort of anything that would like to come and have a nibble at the leaf. There's some crops in the UK being absolutely hammered by things like flea beetles, so that can really hammer and kill a lot of rape crops. Not the case with Ahiflower at all. So we use no pesticides on our production, which is great. We have a very low nitrogen input. It's less than half that you would use on most other crops like oilseed rape or wheat. So that obviously has a huge benefit. It just the principle of, and there's a lot of principles. I could bore you for hours, and I shan't. Don't panic. But one of the principles of regenerative agriculture is basically keeping a root in the ground during the season. So the great thing about Ahiflower is we're planting it in the autumn. You've got the actual crop growing for about 9 months of the year. The big advantage is that after harvest, it's quite an early harvested crop, which then gives our growers the opportunity to then plant cover crops in the ground, which then gives you more biodiversity, huge amounts of soil improvement, organic matter, carbon going back into the soil. So it ticks a huge amount of boxes all the way through.
Right. So in which other ways does Ahiflower fit in with regenerative agriculture principles?
Well, yes, that's a great question. So there are a number of, I mean, whilst regenerative is quite broad, there are a number of key principles there. One of the key ones is minimising soil disturbance, because obviously when you're ploughing, soil can release carbon which into the atmosphere, which is never a good thing from a climate change perspective. So one of the key ones is minimising soil disturbance, and the great thing is the majority of our farmers have what are called direct drills, where you can literally cut the seed straight into the ground. There's no ploughing beforehand, so the seed gets dropped in. So our growers tick that box. Obviously, I've mentioned the armour, which they basically say keep the soil covered. It's almost like giving the soil armour, and so obviously the benefit of that is when you're direct drilling, you've already got some straw from the previous crop, because Ahiflower is what they call a break crop. So basically, rather than growing what they call yellow strawed crops like wheat and barley, if you do that for too long, yields deteriorate. The ground can get sick, and so you normally need a break crop, which is something different. So you basically, one of the principles is keeping the soil covered, so you have straw from the previous crop. Ahiflower itself, once it's growing, you're later in the season, it covers the ground anyway with the biomass, but then the leaf drops down as well after you've combined it. The guys then chop the straw, which then gives it another layer of organic matter on the top as well. So it ticks that principle. The other one is maximising species diversity, and obviously Ahiflower being a totally different species, ticks that box, straight away. In the UK, there are, there's guidance about the number of different crops you should have in the rotation. So it basically widens the rotation, which is a big improvement as well. And then, as I said, the other one is maintaining a living root in the soil all the time, which is then obviously benefiting soil structure. There's less runoff. So as I say, Ahiflower is normally growing itself for about 9 months. Of the year, and then immediately after that, a number of our guys are putting in a multiple mix of species as well. So there's not a single pillar really that at some point we're not meeting.
So a question that a lot of people would be asking is Ahiflower certified organic?
Okay, so Ahiflower it's not certified organic. However, it's a non-GMO producer, so it's all natural plant breeding selection. It's as I mentioned previously, it's a very, very low input crop compared to most of the others. And we also, I guess at the end of the day, after all of our production, we test our oil to be free from pesticides anyway. So as part of our supply chain, we know what's gone on all the way through the season. Every batch, after it's been pressed and refined, we can guarantee it's free from any pesticides. And to be honest, even organic production itself, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's been no pesticides used during the production at all. It just means that they're approved. Well, I say pesticides, but plant protection products, is how they're better named. But it's not to say that they've not been used in production. Most organic production, they don't just plant the seed and leave it. It does have a range of inputs, and this is where it's been quite exciting for us. So whilst it's low input, we're not saying it's no input for Ahiflower, but our development process has been moving away from conventional chemistry. So basically looking at plant health and nutrition as a key driver in building our yield, building performance, building crop resilience. So for example, this year, in house we have about 400 replicated trial plots where we're looking at various nutrient packages. We're looking at things like sort of silicon, amino acids, building up the plant's health itself so it can withstand disease pressure, and withstand drought conditions as well. Just through improved rooting. And then one of the big benefits again, and going back to I guess the regenerative and soil health, is that obviously a better rooted plant's dragging in more nutrients anyway from better soil. So the two combined mean that the crop itself is grown carefully and just generally with sort of minimum inputs that are needed. And the beauty, as I maybe mentioned previously, was we've had no we don't have any insecticides on. The plant itself has that inbuilt resilience, which is ideal.
Great. Simon, it's such a beautiful flower. Where did the name Ahiflower come from? What does it mean?
Yeah, great questions. So I think it's probably familiar in the States, but ahi is the Hawaiian name for tuna. So obviously back in the day when we were coming up with the name, and basically the oil having the same properties as fish oils, we figured Ahiflower was quite a nice fit.
It really is. It's a very beautiful name. A lot of people don't know how to pronounce it at first, but once you do, it's a really beautiful name and beautiful flower.
Exactly, that's right. Yeah, and that's the thing, seeing little tiny white flowers across the country. It's and it could, because Ahiflower flowers over a number of weeks. There's always flowers there. There's always something for pollinators to go at as well.
Lovely. So Simon, for our closing question, what makes the Ahiflower cultivation story sustainable?
Oh, great question, Camilla. Well, I think that the key thing is obviously because we've now got to a level where The yields are where we want to be. The SDA level, which is obviously the key fatty acid in the oil, through our selection, we've built that up over time, so that makes it a really great opportunity to replace fish oil and marine oils. And I guess from a sustainable point of view, one of the big ones obviously is most fisheries now are overfished, in declines. So as we've got the yield there, all we're looking at now is it's a great sustainable source to stop things getting pulled out the oceans. So we mentioned previously the millions and millions of anchovy equivalent that we get from growing ahi flower. If you compare it with other oils, such as krill oil, I guess out there, that's a base. A base in the marine ecosystem, really. So, because ahi flower really lets you remove those from your diet as a fatty acid source, it's a bit of a no-brainer, really. Whether you're vegan, vegetarian, or concerned about the environment, you get all the benefits there. So it helps, I guess, global marine life, global diversity, and then from I guess from a production perspective, the beauty of ahi flowers that we're improving the yields all the time, which is fantastic. We're improving the oil content, oil quality. It's got such a huge way to go, and we've already made great waves there. But from a production point of view, I maybe mentioned earlier, it's really sustainable because we can grow it on a huge range of soil types. It's a crop that doesn't need irrigation, low nitrogen. So basically that helps. Nitrogen obviously is expensive from a cost perspective and from an environmental perspective. And because of the routing that we've got, it's very drought resistant. So last year we were 40-degree heat in the UK, which is it's not the lower temperature I'm particularly fond of. But ahi flower sustain that. So from a production point of view, it's very robust. So we can grow on a huge amount of soil types across the UK. And we've got something like sort of 5 million hectares of land in the UK, and break crops are probably making 700,000-800,000 hectares of that. So in terms of production and where we can expand to, ahi flower ticks all the boxes, and we can produce a huge amount of oil as the market expands.
Fantastic. And just to your point about the 40-degree summers, I mean, we're both British here. I may have a slight Australian twang, but I certainly spent my first 26 years in the United Kingdom. So, I mean, you'd know as well as I do that we didn't have 40-degree summers until very recently. So, for anybody who's in doubt about the climate changing, I mean, it's already really here for us to see.
It is. I think that's right, and this is where as a red-haired, fair-skinned guy, 40 degrees is not my cup of tea when I'm walking fields. But I think you're right. And this is where I think we're fortunate with ahi flower that because it's so resilient. Certain crops don't establish well, or the flowers die off early. The great thing with ahi flower is that it flowers over a 3 or 4 week period, maybe longer. So all the time you've got blooms there, which is great for pollinators. So it's quite robust and resilient just because of the way it grows, which is fantastic.
Yeah, very fortunate given the circumstances.
Indeed.
Well, Simon, I feel like I've learned so much from you today. Thank you so much for your time and for going into so much depth over the regenerative agriculture aspect of ahi flower.
You're welcome. Thanks for inviting me on, Camilla. Pleasure.
Thank you so much.